Welcome to Freaked Out with your co-hosts, Liz and Landon.
What's up, everybody?
I am so incredibly excited to bring you this case today. This is one of those cases I personally wanted to cover and have been dying to cover it for so long now. I had a personal investment in this case, and I will explain that a little bit later on.
We will be covering the case of Jasmine Fiore today. There's going to be a lot to cover in this case. So this case is also technically a solved case, but there is a little bit of pieces that have been missing throughout this case. So we're going to have Liz shed some light on them.
We also wanted to prepare you for this episode because this episode may be a little bit more gruesome than most. So please make sure that little ones are not around and viewers' discretion is advised.
Absolutely, guys, which is most of our episodes. So we're going to get right into it. Jasmine Fiore was a 28-year-old model and a budding entrepreneur who was strangled to death on August 15th, 2009 in California. Her body was mutilated and stuffed inside of a suitcase. The high-profile killing shook the entire entertainment industry.
It shook me to my core.
From the sounds of it, she had a very happy childhood. She grew up as somebody who is very much into sports and most often referred to as a tomboy.
It looks as though she was scouted fairly young when it came to modeling. This was a dream of hers because she wanted to be a model and she wanted to be an actress. Basically, she just wanted fame in general.
It looks as though she was a Marilyn Monroe fan. She wanted to embody Marilyn within her own talents.
She definitely did. She wanted to start off by doing modeling in bikinis and more of the risque stuff. And then she headed into the 18+ content where she would model for hotlines, actually, like those phone lines.
Very interesting. She had started to work her way through being a celebrity, going through a certain channels to start getting noticed and recognized out in the entertainment business.
By the time she hit her 20s, she was well on her way to fame and going to red carpet events and dating other known celebrities.
She was no longer interested in doing modeling anymore, and she wanted to do more serious things. She had gotten into properties and she got her real estate agent license. She was working hard towards her goals in her life at this point.
She didn't want to do like the risque modeling anymore from what she shows me. Now, Jasmine had a boyfriend who was on again, off again by the name of Robert Hausman. She was convinced he was her soulmate and that was the man that she was going to marry. Now, they did spend a lot of time together and they would go back and forth, breaking up, getting back together. She always told her friends that she didn't care who she was with. This is the person she wanted to end up with.
Sadly, that relationship ended up ending and they weren't able to repair it.
She did date a few other men in between, but in 2008, she ended up becoming single.
In March of 2009, Jasmine met a very rich Canadian man. She met him at a casino in Las Vegas, and he goes by the name of Ryan Jenkins.
Now, this is the type of relationship you shouldn't have, but anyways, Jasmine and Ryan had a 48-hour fling together in Las Vegas and had this romantic wind whirl, which ended up turning this relationship into a shotgun wedding. They ended up getting married by the third night in a chapel in Las Vegas.
Ryan was fresh off of filming. He was filming a reality TV show called Megan Wants a Millionaire. The show had not aired yet, but they were in the middle of organizing it and preparing for the release.
This is where I come in. Now, I was obsessed with VH1 reality TV shows. Now, we didn't get them here often in Canada, but when we did, it was special. We loved the reality behind it. Megan Hauserman was in Rock of Love. She was also in a couple other reality shows based around her being someone who was obsessed with money. That was the character she portrayed. And having somebody with money. So she ended up being pretty popular. They ended up giving her own show. And that's kind of where she ended up doing this. Now, I was obsessed with VH1 shows, like I said before. I was really excited about this because I found Megan to be quite obnoxious. And she was kind of funny and didn't care. I'm here for the drama on television, I admit it. I am a reality TV junkie.
You definitely are.
And I was also pretty young at that point, too.
Well, Ryan was one of the contestants on the show because it was more like a bachelor type setting. And she would go on dates with these men and she would eliminate them until she got to the end where she would choose one that she wanted to be with.
Yes. And you know what? I remember liking Ryan quite early. And it looked as though they had a pretty solid connection. At least that's the kind of thing that he was showing everyone. Apparently, he had the nickname of Smooth Operator because he was very smooth.
I mean, he must have been to convince women to marry him just after meeting them for only 3 days.
And from what Megan had said, she and him had a very instant connection. And he actually made it all the way up to the part of 3 people left. Now, on the show, he would make comments about how he wanted to get married to her after the show was done so that he could basically stay with her in the U.S. And he kept referencing green card, green card, green card often, actually.
He only had finished wrapping that show up and then getting kicked off of it, and then he met Jasmine just a few days later.
In preparation for the green card, I'm assuming.
I mean, how can you be in love with one person and then all of a sudden meet somebody and then fall in love with them?
Right.
It definitely seems like he was literally just looking for the green card. The 2 of them decided to throw a lot of elaborate parties, and he was always posting on social media about the 2 of them and how they have this great life now. They both wanted extravagant lifestyles, and that is exactly what they did in their time together.
He posted this all on MySpace, by the way, guys. Everyone around them felt like the 2 of them had a pretty decent relationship. They couldn't keep their hands off each other. They were quite inappropriate at times, which people found uncomfortable, but just kind of dealt with it. But ultimately, everyone had stated that they seemed really good together.
Until Ryan started to get jealous. And his jealousy started to come out more and more so. And I guess he didn't realize that her modeling lifestyle would have to continue to follow along with their lifestyle. He didn't like the idea of other men looking at her in magazines or even wanting her in any way. It affected him tremendously.
According to sources, it was part of the lifestyle, but because her adult content in her adult photos and her posing in photos, she would get hit on often, and he really struggled with that a lot.
She also was somebody who kept her ex-boyfriends very close to her. She still had a relationship with most of them, and he was not a fan of that either.
Well, it looks as though Jasmine may have been cheating on her husband rather early. She would find people at parties and then just make out with them. And he would get upset, really upset. He made a big scene at a pool party, and he ended up pushing her in the pool.
They were only married approximately 3 months at this point.
Imagine getting to that escalated point at this, you know what I mean? I don't know.
Why you shouldn't get married after 3 days.
Jasmine did end it and pressed charges against him. And he ended up sitting in a cell for approximately 2 days. And I believe the charge was battery. I believe he was also given probation for about a year.
She started to lie to him about where she was going and how she was getting there because she was afraid to talk about anything in relation to males. So she would never talk about any men that she had any sort of connection or any sort of conversation or any sort of working life with.
Exactly. They had initially been staying in Las Vegas, and then Jasmine ended up leaving Las Vegas and headed to LA without him. Now, according to Jasmine, she wasn't trying to escape him. She was just trying to play games with him, and she was hoping that he would chase her.
He did end up following her to LA, and unfortunately, the relationship continued to escalate.
So because she had spent so much time cheating on him, he decided, I'm gonna get back at her. And he started cheating on her as well. And that obviously caused some sort of reaction, and it made her feel jealous.
Yes, he staged this so that he ended up bringing these women into the home that they shared, which, by the way, she paid for everything. And he knew that she was going to be coming home. So he slept with this woman in their bed around the time that she was supposed to be entering the home.
Now, obviously, Jasmine at this point decided that she was over the relationship, and she informed him that she was going to get an annulment.
This Canadian started to panic because he didn't want to lose out on his green card opportunity, so he started freaking out again and decided that he was going to reach out to Megan once more.
Dude ends up meeting Megan. Now, according to Megan, he looked terrible. He had lost weight, he was pale, he didn't seem himself, and she couldn't believe that this was the same guy that she had spent time with 6 months prior.
Megan had ended up rejecting him and telling him that she didn't want anything more than just friendship. And then he started to ask her what he should do in relation to his failing marriage.
Oh, yeah, so let's try to get Megan, and then Megan rejects him, and, okay, well, let's get back with my wife then. Like, oh my God. He had a plan and had gotten a booking to be on the show of I Love Money. It's a spinoff from the Megan Wants to Be a Millionaire show. He thought by winning the money, he could give it to Jasmine, and he would be able to get her back.
Now let's talk about the money situation here for a moment. He told her that he was a millionaire, but he never paid her not one red cent. He would tell her that his money was tied up in Canada and all these investments in Canada.
Now she is laughing in the background right now. It's not because of the situation or anything along those lines, but she's laughing that anyone can just say they are rich, but are they actually? No. She said she should have done her research before even marrying him, calling someone to check and see his finances. She said that she had people in high places that she knew that she could have gotten them to do background checks, but she ignored it because she went with her heart. She also shows me that there were many people that tried to warn her of this back in the day as well.
According to sources, this guy was a powerhouse in that game and he wanted all the challenges. He had an alliance with some other chick named Lacey Goals. She might have liked him a bit, but he focused heavily on Jasmine. Ironically enough, he ended up winning the show and he ended up winning $250,000.
Like, go figure. August 3rd, 2009 was when the first episode of Megan Wants a Millionaire aired. According to sources, Ryan started to get some recognition at this point, and they both loved the attention. And they also started to look normal again. Their relationship was good again. At least that's what people had seen.
On August 13th of 2009, the two of them decided to go away together for a charity poker tournament with other celebrity guests.
On August 15th, only 2 days after they had arrived for the charity event, something took place because the vibe seemed off again.
According to sources, Ryan started contacting her friends and asking if they had seen her. He had apparently been texting her and she wasn't answering and he couldn't see her.
According to Ryan, she was driving him home. She dropped him off and said she had to go run some errands and she would be back that day.
Nobody ended up seeing her, so he ended up contacting the police, indicating that she was a missing person.
She just made a statement. He seriously thought he was going to get away with this?
There was a very unusual incident that took place that morning that the police had got in contact with Ryan. There was a man walking his dog, and he had seen a suitcase in a garbage bin.
And the suitcase was leaking some sort of fluid, which is why the man had called in this suspicious suitcase.
The man decided to open up the suitcase with his finger to see if there was anything inside, and then he seen a body.
Now, Jasmine is screaming in frustration in this particular situation. She's showing me that obviously Ryan put her in the suitcase, there's no doubt about it. But she's also showing me that he had no respect for her. He just threw her away like she was trash, and she's showing me she was extremely angry on how he disrespected her body and left it.
Jasmine was completely naked and curled up in a fetal position within the suitcase. Her body was beaten and mutilated, and some body parts were also missing.
Her teeth had been pulled out, her fingers had been cut off. This was overkill, to say the least. She said that she thrived on beauty and worked damn hard on it, and he ruined her even after her death. She is beyond devastated in the condition of her body and the way it was found.
I know that's how she felt, of course, but he was probably doing all of that so nobody could identify her.
Hey, she shows me that she put one hell of a fight up as well. Now, she shows me he definitely did strangle her, but he also beat her very badly, and she says she survived that. She said she wasn't going without a fight, though. She was scared, and she did it anyway.
Sadly, they were not able to identify her right away. One of the pathologists had noticed that she had some scarring, and it looks like that she had a breast augmentation surgery done.
That's right. The breast augmentation surgery would have had a serial number on it one way or another.
Exactly.
Well, as you have it, automatically they reached out to Ryan to talk to him about what took place or what he may know. They checked his LA home with her. Unfortunately, they couldn't find him, which was very unusual since they had been communicating with him over the last couple days surrounding her disappearance.
He was asked to come in for questioning, and he informed them that he couldn't come in because his visa was expiring. and that he had to get back to Canada. That part would be confusing, as you and I both know, being an American and Canadian, there are options for people that are married. So why would he go back with his visa expiring? He was married to an American, and he definitely had the money to take care of the paperwork.
The police were worried, and they felt like he was a dangerous man. So they put out a warrant for his arrest, and they continued to search for him heavily. They could not find him for 3 days. They had no idea if he was in the US or Canada at this point.
They did find her white Mercedes, and they were able to find a lot of evidence in there, including blood and hair, as if her hair was being pulled out. They also found it a mile away from her home.
They also found a letter in the glove box from Ryan to Jasmine. It was fairly unhinged and gave them a lot of evidence to continue to point in the direction of Ryan Jenkins. Jasmine also wanted to point out that she left these little pieces of evidence because she knew her life was going to end.
The police investigation led them to the hotel that they were staying at. When it came to the poker charity tournament, they were able to find very unusual footage from the hotel surveillance. They seen that Ryan had left a few times through the front door to grab ice, to grab a couple of other items. He also had a phone that the hotel had accommodations for people to use in his hands. It was just very unusual and bizarre.
Yes, and Jasmine really wants to get into this right now. So she's telling me to tell you that she had seen a person leave, and then there was like the secondary door into the hotel room, which is like the back door. From what she shows me, they had a very toxic argument in her vehicle. It might have happened in the parking lot of this particular hotel. It looks as though she was communicating with a few men, and he was not happy about it, including her ex-boyfriend, Robert. Now, her and her ex-boyfriend, Robert, had many interactions, and he was not happy about it. And they also partied all the time. It looks like the two of them got into a huge altercation because she was kind of suggesting she was going to go meet him. And she shows me she told him that she was basically done with him at this point because he did hit her a lot. Like he smacked her, pulled her hair. He would dig his fingers into her legs and arms. He did choke her. He did a lot of bad things to her, and this happened in the background often. This actually happened very soon into their relationship too, by the way. Her being pushed into the pool was probably the most public thing he had done, but she shows me he was consistently doing things to her often, which pissed her off.
They did not get any footage of her going in and out of the hotel room other than the initial time that she had left. Did she use that back door to get back into the hotel room?
She did. She shows me she couldn't walk. Her hearing was off. She was dazed and confused. Her head was hurting. It was like pounding, worse than she ever felt anything before. She shows me that she definitely had a concussion. She said that she had never felt so much pain in her head, and he had beaten her in the car so badly that she was very, very weak and in a pretty weak state. She was barely moving. She shows me that she was barely moving, but he also insisted that he would help her get in, which is why he kind of rushed into the hotel room, got the back door open, and let her in. Now, she shows me that she thinks it's because she had a black eye. It was kind of starting to swell, so she couldn't really see much. She doesn't know all the little details there because she was in and out when it comes to getting back to the hotel room.
What happened next?
So she shows me she just wanted to go to bed. She was trying to lay down, and in her mind, the next morning, she was leaving him. She didn't want to explain that to him because she had said it to him a few times in the car, and she ended up getting beaten. So she just wanted to tell him she wanted to go to sleep. And unfortunately, he was not letting that happen. He kept screaming at her and telling her she needed to talk to him. They needed to work it out because they were married. He also told her he was sorry over and over and over again about hurting her. She basically had a few moments where she would tell him it was okay, and then he would make some sort of statement, throw insults at her, and call her a whore. She said it really was hard to not fight back at him because he consistently kept throwing these abusive words at her.
I can only imagine this poor girl is fighting for her life and she can't really do much because he's just controlling the situation.
Oh yeah, she kept telling herself to make it through the night, to make it through the night, to keep her smart mouth shut because she knew if she had said one more thing, he would kill her. He told her he was going to kill her if she ever left. She didn't hear this only once, of course. He had said this consistently over time. Throughout this time frame, it would be like one moment he would be telling her he loved her, and then the second minute he would call her a whore. She knows she made a mistake surrounding this relationship, and she knows she was playing with him a lot, but she said she certainly did not deserve this.
Definitely not. So why did he have that phone from the hotel lobby?
I really feel like he used the phone as a device to actually strangle her. Now, she explains she was laying down in bed and she was pretending to be sleeping or pretending to not be scared shitless of him, but she was. She kept saying to him, I just want to sleep. My head hurts. We'll talk about this in the morning. And he ignored her. He kept telling her to listen to him. She had just had enough. And for a brief moment, he had said something pretty triggering to her. I don't know what exactly, but it was a low blow. And she had never heard him say it before. So she was extremely triggered. She turned around and told him he was a psychopath and she hated him and that she was going to divorce him and that she would never wanted to be with him again. She knew right then and there that something big was coming. And in that moment, she rolled back over and he took the phone cord and wrapped it around her neck. Several times she was fighting him off significantly. She was able to get her fingers around the cord and pull it. He would just hold it harder and harder until he just killed her. He had his leg in the arch of her back, pushing her forward, and he continued to suffocate her. Her eyes rolled to the back of her head, and she shows me she knew in that moment she was going to die. She told him through her, trying to breathe, she could barely muster it up, but to tell her family she loves them, and that to tell the world she loves them, and she loves how much everyone loved her. And then the lights went out for her at that point.
Such a tragic situation, and for what?
I know, right? I can't even believe that happened.
The police were able to identify spots of blood on the patio of the hotel room as well, and of course DNA matched Jasmine Fiore.
There were a lot of theories about the reasons he brought the phone with him out to the lobby, and it makes sense that he would try to stop her from making calls, but from what she shows me, she was already dead. He had obtained an ice to keep the body fresh. He was trying to come up with methods so that the rigor mortis didn't kick in so easily. He was trying to find ways to fit her in the suitcase as well. He used a few items that he had concocted, but the ice also helped ease his mind.
I mean, a lot of people, he's obviously got the murder weapon in his hand, so that's why he's walking around with the phone, because it's the murder weapon. It's ultimately what took Jasmine's life, because he was strangling her with it. So maybe he was trying to find a place to get rid of it, because all of her DNA would be all over that phone now.
That's a good point.
Well, he ended up leaving at approximately 9:30 a.m. in the morning, so basically cleaned up and took off.
Yep, he knew that the cameras were around too, so he would try to make it seem like he was frantically worried about her and couldn't find her anywhere. He decided that he needed to get rid of all the DNA evidence, and he cleaned up. I don't think he cleaned up well, of course. He also took those extra body parts of hers. I feel like he put them in Ziploc bags, and I think he disposed of them at random garbage spots.
There was no surveillance footage of him taking out the suitcase, so did he go through the back patio with this?
Jasmine tells me yes. She even says that he damaged some of her clothing pieces that meant a lot to her, and she also had makeup that he removed all of that so he could basically shove her in. She showed me that he had no remorse, no emotions. He did not love her. He just loved that she could basically give him a green card. She said she just wants everyone to know that this was all going on.
5 days after all of this took place, the police did end up charging him with murder, even though they didn't even have him in custody.
Which is so crazy and rare. But anyway, on August 23rd, only 8 days later, there was a man who owns a motel in BC, and it was called the Thunderbed Hotel. He called the police, indicating that he had found a dead body in one of his hotel rooms.
According to sources, a woman paid for this hotel room for him for 3 days. Apparently, she had spent a few minutes with him and then left.
Yes, his body was found in this motel room after 3 days of renting it was up. So, of course, they went to check on him and he was dead and he had committed suicide by hanging himself.
They also found a last will and testament, and it was really more like a suicide note, but also talking about his life and how Jasmine ruined it. But he didn't talk about anything murder related. He just basically said that it was her fault that he had become the way he did.
And just to clarify, a lot of people speculate that he was in there for a couple of days before hanging himself. I feel like he was there for about 48 hours before he decided to make that decision of hanging himself. And he took a couple of hours to write out his emotions and feelings. And from what I gather, because Jasmine at the time had followed him, kind of in that ghost form, he didn't really give two shits about her or anything. And he just kept screaming about her, ruining his life over and over again. She shows me he was extremely panicked about his reputation being destroyed. He was panicked on who he had become. He contemplated for a while on what to do. And the strangest thing that she shows me is he was watching television. In that moment, as he was watching, it might have been one of his episodes, I'm not entirely sure, but there was something that triggered him on TV that made him snap right up in that moment and kill himself. She shows me she smiled because she wanted him dead, and she wanted him to die the way she died. She wanted him to be mutilated. He never got that, and she calls him a big pussy.
They ended up finding out that the woman who helped him was his half-sister, and that there are some questions around this as well. Did she know that he committed murder?
She definitely did. Not only was it in the headlines everywhere, I even heard of it, and I never hear anything. So his sister knew that he was on the run and she was trying to give him a way out. I don't think she knew about his suicide plans, though. I feel like he basically reached out to his sister because he knew he could. She was a bit of a distant relative in the sense of the relationship from the rest of the family, so they wouldn't obviously go to her first. He knew that she would be the only one that would help him, and she did. She also knew his plan was to either escape or find some sort of fake passports or something, at least in that direction. She was trying to stop him from doing anything stupid, though. He told her he would just flee because she was scared he would kill himself. Either way, he told her to give him 3 days to get everything prepared to leave, and ultimately his initial plan was definitely to kill himself. He wanted the world to hear his side of the story, which is why he came up with the letter from what she shows me.
Well, I know he's dead as well, but does he at all communicate with her?
Oh my gosh, no, he is not around her. Not even a little bit. In fact, I feel like he went to the bad place or he's just stuck somewhere. Either way, his crimes were of a serial killer deep within him. And from what I can see, he had major serial killer instincts in his life. Even in the background, he was capable of a lot of things. He's broken necks before. I don't know if it was human, but definitely did something along those lines. He had a really bad temperament. And he did a good job of hiding it because he was so smooth. People didn't see it, but he hid his scary side from the world and finally came out. Thankfully, he didn't come through, but she says she's always afraid he'll just pop up out of nowhere. But I believe that's because of how brutal, he was to her. And of course, she was super traumatized. She also, from what I can see, didn't cross over exactly. She's still kind of hanging out. I initially felt like she had crossed over, but from what I can see, she's not crossed over because she's still in that place. But I think she will eventually.
I have one more question. The night that she was at the poker tournament, she was texting her ex-boyfriend, the one that she saw herself growing old with. From what I gather, she was begging to get out of there on a private jet because she was feeling uncomfortable. Was this what set Ryan off?
It was definitely one of the things to set him off. I believe that there were explicit things that the two of them had been sending each other, like dirty messages, dirty photos, saying she missed his dick, things like that. And I feel like that is what really escalated him. But regardless of him being set off or not, it should never have happened. But Jasmine is okay. She is a star in the same way she's always been.
Well, guys, that definitely wraps up this episode. Next week, we have our 2 bonus episodes coming out. Both of them will be on the exclusive side, so make sure that you guys are subscribed to the patron side. It will be Bob Marley and Sandra Bland are the 2 choices for that.
I am personally excited myself to do both of those as well. Bob Marley has been a figure in my life. I I can't even remember when, but I've loved him ever since.
Definitely love Bob Marley. Well, guys, until next week, stay freaked out.